Everyone thinks they know Emperor Nero, the fire, the fiddle, the mad poetry on palace balconies. Well, buckle up because the truth is so much worse. This is a man who didn't just murder his mother, he had her disemboweled and inspected like expired meat. A man so obsessed with beauty he castrated a young boy, just to turn him into a replacement for his dead wife. You're about to discover the grotesque true story behind Nero and Sporus, the emperor, the eunuch, and a romance forged in absolute psychosis. If you thought Game of Thrones was disturbing, you're not ready for what Roman history actually looked like. Let's begin. He was the empire's golden boy, Turkey, until he lost his mind. Nero started off like a dream. Imagine a teenage emperor, charming, musically inclined, a patron of the arts. Roman nobles thought they'd finally caught a break. But here's the truly horrifying part. It took less than 5 years for that sweet boy to spiral into a megalomaniac who staged his own performances while thousands were starving. You don't learn this in school, but by age 22, Nero had murdered his stepbrother, his own mother, and his first wife. His moral compass wasn't just broken, it had been thrown in a bonfire. Picture this, a gilded theater packed with trembling spectators forced to applaud Nero's dreadful singing lest they be dragged out and beaten. That was just Act 1. He killed his wife, then went shopping for a replacement. Poppaea Sabina, Nero's second wife, was famed for her beauty, but Nero, in a fit of rage during pregnancy, kicked her so hard she died. But wait, it gets worse. Instead of mourning, Nero searched for someone who resembled her, someone young, smooth-skinned, delicate. And that's when he found Sporus, a boy, probably around 10 to 14 years old. You don't hear this part in documentaries, but Nero had him castrated, dressed him in imperial silks, and paraded him around as his new empress. Let that sink in. A boy, mutilated to become a stand-in for a dead woman. And the Romans? They watched this like it was normal. Senators clapped. Priests blessed the marriage. Nero even called Sporus Sabina and forced the court to do the same. He held a royal wedding with a eunuch bride. Now here's where the darkness turned surreal. In 67 AD, Nero staged a full imperial wedding. The groom himself, the bride, Sporus, draped in veils, perfumed, and marched through Rome. The entire ceremony was a farce soaked in blood. Roman nobles whispered that Sporus looked terrified, his eyes always darting like a lamb dressed for slaughter. But here's what makes it truly grotesque. Nero didn't just force Sporus into feminine clothes, he demanded complete behavioral mimicry, voice, gestures, posture, and Roman etiquette demanded you play along. Imagine senators giving toasts, pretending this was love and not a theater of trauma. All while the boy who once had a name answered only to the ghost of a dead woman. He took his new wife on a honeymoon from hell. After the wedding, Nero didn't just hide Sporus away in the palace. Oh no. He took him on tour, a grotesque imperial honeymoon, flaunting the boy empress across Greece and Asia Minor. Crowds cheered, priests blessed them, coins were minted. But here's the part that curdles your blood. At every stop, Nero forced Sporus to sit beside him on a golden litter, hand in hand, like a twisted parody of imperial matrimony. And this wasn't subtle. He paraded Sporus in public events, theatrical performances, state ceremonies, cooing at him like a blushing bridegroom. Behind closed doors, the stories get darker. Sporus was never given the chance to be a child again. No freedom, no identity, just a living doll in the shadow of a woman whose bones were already dust. You might think, surely someone in Rome objected. But when the emperor is a god and the boy is his goddess, protest becomes a death sentence. His palace was a funhouse of horror. By now, Nero wasn't just unhinged. He was reinventing decadence into something almost mythological. He built the Domus Aurea, a golden house where ceilings dripped perfume, slaves rotated dining rooms like clock hands, and guests dined under stars that weren't real. And through it all, Sporus sat beside him. But here's the truly sick twist. In one part of the palace, there was a rotating dome, engineered so Nero could impersonate the sun god while forcing his guests to witness his divine union with Sporus. A boy married to madness was beneath a moving sky. Imagine the smell of incense, the trembling of senators, the whimper of a child trying to smile through it all. You don't learn this in history class, but some historians believe Nero truly believes Sporus was Poppaea reborn, reincarnated, restored, rebroken. The line between delusion and cruelty had completely disappeared. He was obsessed with applause, even as Rome crumbled. Nero didn't rule, he performed. Rome burned, and he sang arias. Plague struck and he played the liar. He once forced senators to sit through 5-hour-long concerts, locking the doors so no one could leave. But here's the punchline dipped in acid. Some nobles faked heart attacks to escape. One woman gave birth during a show, and Nero kept playing. And beside him on stage, Sporus, dressed like Venus, painted like a marble statue, holding a fan as Nero basked in the spotlight. The empire was unraveling, and Nero's response? Encore. He was hunted like an animal and still thought of her. By 68 AD, Rome had had enough. The Senate declared Nero a public enemy, his guards deserted him, his friends fled. He was forced to escape the city in disguise, hiding in the home of a former slave. And here's where things twist again. As the world turned to ash around him, Nero brought Sporus. Yes, even in exile, even on the run. With a dagger to his throat, knowing his end had come, Nero's final words weren't about his empire or his crimes. He looked at Sporus and said, "What an artist dies with me." Then he plunged the blade into his neck, a showman to the bitter end. Death couldn't even stop the chaos. You might think the horror ended there, but no, Nero's death was just the beginning of Sporus' next nightmare. Because without Nero's protection, Sporus became imperial baggage, property, not person. He was scooped up by a Roman official named Nymphidius Sabinus. Now here's where it slides into grotesque parody. Nymphidius wasn't just interested in Sporus, he wanted the whole Nero cosplay. He forced Sporus to marry him too. Another mock wedding, another veil, another bouquet for a boy who had long forgotten what it meant to be human. Historians wrote that Nymphidius dressed Sporus in the same royal silks Nero used, like passing around a relic soaked in trauma. And if you're wondering, yes, this ended in blood. Nymphidius tried to seize the throne, his rebellion failed, he was executed by his own guards. Sporus once again survived, but survival didn't mean freedom. The final act, he chose death over performance. Under Emperor Vitellius, the court jesters returned for one final abominable show. Vitellius, ever the showman, decided Sporus should appear in a public farce. A comedic reenactment of the rape of Proserpina. Yes, you heard that right. He wanted to stage a live rape of Sporus in front of a laughing audience. That was the script. Sporus had been dragged through so many masks by this point. The idea of one final humiliation on stage as Rome jeered, it was too much. He didn't wait for the performance. He killed himself. A boy who had once been renamed, refashioned, and rewritten like a character in someone else's fever dream, finally wrote his own ending. So there you have it. Not a legend, not a love story. A walking horror show scripted by madness and applauded by an empire. Sporus was a child, forced into drag and divine delusion. A ghost bride with no ghost of a choice. Nero, a man who didn't just rewrite history, he mutilated it to fit his fantasy. Now you tell me, was Nero a product of his time, or something far darker? If history like this made your jaw drop, hit that subscribe. And trust me, you haven't heard anything yet.